Hey, how's it going? I'm a psychiatrist, and I wanted to make a video to help people to understand insomnia and then just a few of the principles of the best way to manage it, notably the principles of CBT-i. So, insomnia isn't just about not sleeping. It's actually better understood as a cycle of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that make someone miserable and keep sleep out of reach. So, to make this as practical as possible, I'm going to use a simple analogy. That's the gas and brake model. So, there are two key factors that determine how well and how much a person sleeps. The first is the gas, and that's your sleep drive. That's your body's natural push towards sleep. And the second is the brake. The brake is hyperarousal. That's the force that keeps you awake and prevents you from sleeping. So, what is the gas? So that's the sleep drive, and that's the body's internal mechanism for producing sleep. And it follows a very simple principle, and that's just the longer that you stay awake, the greater your sleep drive is going to be. And it's worth noting that the sleep drive is the only thing that creates sleep. All right, so what is the brake? The brake is hyperarousal, a heightened emotional state like anxiety, stress, excitement, or curiosity. And the brake exists to keep you safe. So for example, if you think you left your oven on, the brake's going to prevent you from falling asleep. But in insomnia, the brake isn't triggered by actually dangerous things. It's actually just being awake that's seen as a threat. So then how is it that you improve sleep? Well, based on our analogy, it's pretty simple. There's two things you can do. One, increase the gas so you can strengthen your sleep drive. Or two, decrease the brake and reduce hyperarousal. So now let's dive into the principles of CBT-i, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and see how they work to adjust the gas and the brake system. I'm going to talk about four things in this video. First, understanding the cycle of insomnia. Second, cognitive restructuring. Third, sleep restriction. And fourth, stimulus control. I know the last three might sound a little fancy, but they're actually pretty simple concepts, and hopefully I can break them down and make them accessible to you. So first, let's start off by talking about how insomnia develops and talking about the cycle of insomnia. The first thing that's important to understand is that a short period of insomnia or a few days where you don't sleep that well is completely normal. So periods of sleeplessness for a few nights are an inevitable part of being a human and dealing with stressful life changes. It's completely normal to have difficulty sleeping when dealing with the death of a loved one, a divorce, a hospitalization, or major family changes. And in fact, the number of people who never experience a short period of this is super tiny. It's like 5%. So a short period where it's difficult to sleep can actually be adaptive. It gives a person extra time to think and cope with whatever stressful issue is on their mind. But for most people, short-term insomnia only lasts a few days, and then they bounce back to their normal sleep. So a few days of crappy sleep isn't really that big of an issue. It's just a normal part of being a human being. So it's only for a few people that acute insomnia develops into chronic insomnia and becomes a problem. So let's talk about why short-term insomnia turns into chronic insomnia. So to grasp this, we need to understand the chronic insomnia cycle. So first is the acute insomnia I just talked about, and that's poor sleep that starts due to stress, pain, or some other stressor. Second, the person tries to fix the problem, but it actually backfires. So habits like napping during the day, spending extra time in bed, or creating routines that accidentally reinforce sleeplessness can actually serve to do more harm than good in terms of the gas brake thing. So step 3 is that the sleep problems persist. So despite the efforts to fix it, the sleep doesn't improve and the person starts to get stuck. And step 4 is crucial. That's negative thoughts and beliefs about sleep start to develop. So as anxiety about sleep increases, it leads the person to dread bedtime, feeling frustrated in bed, and ultimately worsening sleep. This causes the person to go back to the start of the cycle, and the sleeplessness just gets worse and worse. Now, looking at this cycle, I hope you can see that it's not the sleeplessness that's the core problem in someone with insomnia. It's the negative thoughts that turn into negative beliefs and maladaptive behaviors that's really the crux of the problem. And that's because negative thoughts lead to high emotions, and high emotions make it difficult to sleep. So here's what the problematic feedback loop looks as someone's lying in bed trying to sleep. So first, the person lies in bed and tries to sleep. Second, they have a negative sleep thought, like, I need to fall asleep soon or else I'm screwed for tomorrow. Or, if I don't get 8 hours tonight, I'm going to make a fool of myself tomorrow. This thought makes the individual anxious and increases the stress response. The stress response increases wakefulness, decreases the sleep system, and ultimately keeps you awake, which is a terrible feedback loop of becoming more and more frustrated and having more and more negative thoughts. So once a person's in this cycle, the bed becomes a frustration cue. Instead of associating your bed with sleep, the insomniac associates it with being awake and being frustrated. So to fix the insomnia, you need to first address the negative thought patterns through cognitive restructuring. This decreases the brakes. Second, you need to increase the association of your bed with sleep. This is done through stimulus control. This also decreases the brakes. And third, you need to improve sleep efficiency, which I'll talk about later. But this is done through sleep restriction, and this helps increase the gas. So let's go into each of these three concepts so that you can understand them better. So let's start with cognitive restructuring. So one of the key messages here is that the most salient problem with insomnia is the negative thoughts and beliefs about sleep. And that's because these beliefs make you anxious, and they increase stress, and they ultimately hurt sleep. So the first step in managing insomnia is addressing NSTs, negative sleep thoughts, which act as a psychological brake by increasing hyperarousal. To say that another way, any sort of heightened emotions while trying to sleep make it more difficult to sleep. So negative thoughts and beliefs that develop from insomnia cause intense emotions, and then these intense emotions fuel the insomnia. So to fix this, you need to identify and replace negative sleep thoughts with more positive ones. This isn't a case of being naive and stupidly optimistic. Yes, negative thoughts do have some truth to them, but most of them are distorted and highly exaggerated versions of reality. And the goal is to acknowledge that they're distortions. So let's review the cognitive restructuring process. First, you identify an unhelpful thought, you evaluate the evidence, you challenge the belief, and you replace it with a balanced thought. So an example of a negative thought, I won't function tomorrow without 8 hours of sleep. And a more balanced thought, I may be irritable tomorrow, but I've gotten through a lot tougher days on a lot less sleep. So here are some common negative sleep thoughts. I didn't sleep at all last night. I have to sleep 8 hours or else I can't function. I'm miserable right now because I didn't sleep last night. I can't do anything today because I'm exhausted. I'm dreading going to sleep tonight. I can't sleep without a sleeping pill. My ability to sleep is broken. Everyone sleeps well but me. My insomnia will cause major health problems down the road. So now I'm just going to go through a few of these negative sleep thoughts and challenge them. The first one, I have to sleep X hours or else I can't function. Here I'm going to introduce golden tool number 1. That's the concept of core sleep. So core sleep is the first 5 to 5.5 hours of the night, and that's when you're getting the majority of deep sleep, stages 3 and 4. So if you sleep more than 5 hours, you're getting the core sleep that you need to function. And even if you do get less than this, your body knows to compensate for it the next day. And the truth is, most people maintain over 90% of their performance, alertness, and concentration with core sleep alone. So the truth is, on 5 hours of sleep, you might feel irritable or be a little bit more moody, but you can still function and do everything you need to do. So when you have the thought, I need to sleep 8 hours tonight or else I'm screwed, you can replace it with, I can function on little sleep. I've done it before. Negative sleep thought number 2, I'm miserable because I didn't sleep last night. Now here's golden tool number 2. That's live your life even with the insomnia. Even after a really bad night's sleep, it's important that you continue to live your life and do the things that you value and find important. So when people are in the throes of insomnia, their belief that they're going to be miserable can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think a good way to show how much your beliefs impact how you're doing, think about a time when you lost a lot of sleep, but it was for a happy occasion. Maybe it was a party or a wedding night or when you're on vacation. I'm sure you can find an example where you got a really, really tiny amount of sleep and the next day we're able to function completely fine. So these instances show us that expectations shape a lot of how our days go. And it can be really helpful to adopt the mindset that, yeah, I didn't sleep last night, but I'm not going to let insomnia dictate how I live my life. And I'm going to continue to do the things that I find important. Negative sleep thought number 3, I'm dreading going to sleep tonight. So this brings us to golden tool number 3. That's the medal system. And this is based on paradoxical intention. And what that means is that the more you try to go to sleep, the harder it is. So instead of striving really hard to go to sleep, which inevitably will backfire, you remove the pressure and focused on being on a restful state without sleep. So the gold medal goes to when you're completely asleep in bed, which is obviously the best state for rest and recovery. The silver medal is awarded for quiet wakefulness. and that's lying in bed calmly with your eyes closed. You accept being awake without judgment, and you observe your thoughts and sensations like a peaceful bystander. And this is the crux of the tool, that this state of quiet wakefulness actually preserves energy and is a much more restful state than being frustrated in bed. It also trains your brain to associate the bed with relaxation and creates the conditions for natural sleep to emerge. So acceptance of wakefulness paradoxically removes obstacles to falling asleep over time. And then the next is no meddle at all. So you get no meddle at all when you struggle in bed, when you're lying in bed awake, feeling frustrated, anxious, or trying to force sleep. This state amplifies insomnia by increasing arousal and reinforcing negative associations with your bed. So the tool here is to celebrate silver. The Insomniac lifeline is recognizing the value of the silver metal. Quiet wakefulness is restorative and helps conserve energy for the day ahead. So striving for silver, resting calmly in bed without struggling against wakefulness, is a powerful step towards breaking the insomnia cycle. And by celebrating silver, you reduce the pressure to achieve gold, which paradoxically allows natural sleep to emerge over time. And silver isn't just a consolation prize, it's a meaningful and helpful state that reinforces positive associations with your bed and rewires your brain for rest. All right, the next negative sleep thought, everyone sleeps well but me, or my ability to sleep is broken. The truth is that there's no such thing as having a broken sleep brain. Sleep is a universal human function. Let me say that again. No human has a broken ability to sleep. Sleep is a natural functioning part of every person, but sometimes our thoughts can get in the way. So the problem isn't our broken sleep system, it's negative thoughts and negative behaviors. So when you have these thoughts, try to replace the thoughts with, it's natural for me to sleep. The next negative sleep thought is, my insomnia will cause terrible health problems. If you listen to all those sleep gurus and podcasts, you might hear alarming statistics about how chronic insomnia increases the risks of diabetes and cancer and all these terrible things. But in absolute terms, the risk is not as dramatic as it seems. And the important thing, worrying about these risks is much worse for your health than the insomnia itself. So when you have these thoughts, focus on the present and adopt balanced beliefs. Say to yourself, I'm addressing my insomnia in healthy ways that will be improving my well-being. All right, now let's move to sleep restriction. So when people with insomnia spend too much time in bed trying to sleep, they weaken their sleep drive, the gas. Sleep restriction solves this by building up the sleep drive through controlled sleep deprivation. To understand why sleep restriction works, let's talk about sleep efficiency. So sleep efficiency is a percentage of time you spend sleeping while in your bed. So for example, if you're in bed from midnight to 8 a.m., 8 hours, but you only sleep from 4 to 8, 4 hours, your sleep efficiency is 4 hours divided by 8 hours, which is 50%. So the goal of sleep restriction is to increase sleep efficiency by limiting the amount of time you spend in bed awake. So how is this actually done in practice? So to execute sleep restriction, step 1 is you track your sleep. So for about a week, you just note the time that you go to bed, the time that you fall asleep, the time that you wake up, and the time that you get out of bed. Then step 2 is you set a restricted schedule. So you calculate the average time spent sleeping, not time in bed, and then you add 1 hour to it. So for example, let's say you go to bed at 11 p.m., you don't fall asleep till 3 a.m., and then you sleep till 9 a.m. Well, the average amount of time that you actually slept was 6 hours. So you add an hour to that, so it's 7 hours. And then you pick the time that you need to wake up, and then go to bed accordingly. So for my example, the person slept 6 hours, and they need to wake up at 9 a.m., so we give them 7 hours of time in bed. So their bedtime becomes 2 a.m. So step 3 is you stick to that schedule. So you stay up until your set bedtime. So in our example, you stay up till 2 a.m. And then you wake up at the same time every day, even if you're sleep deprived. Then step 4 is you gradually expand the sleep time. So to do this, once you maintain 80% sleep efficiency for a week, you shift your bedtime earlier 15 to 30 minutes. So those are the steps to sleep restriction. I hope it doesn't sound too complicated. Basically, you just track your sleep for a week, you figure out how much you're actually sleeping, and then you create a schedule that takes that amount of time and adds 1 hour, and you stick to that schedule. And then lastly, you gradually add time after you've had a week of really good sleep efficiency. So why does sleep restriction work? So it strengthens the association between being in bed and sleeping. It increases the sleep drive by creating mild sleep deprivation. And over time, it improves the quality and the depth of sleep. An important thing I should note, is that you really need to have at least 5 to 6 hours of sleep. So if you calculate that you're getting less than that, you definitely shouldn't be doing this on your own and should get a professional involved. Now, an important note, if you're doing sleep restriction, you're probably staying up a lot later than you're used to. And it's important that you try to stay productive during that extra time awake. So it can be helpful to engage in relaxing hobbies like reading or listening to music. And it's important that you avoid high stress things. So try to avoid really emotional conversations with your partner, try to avoid doing work, or just basically anything that's stressful for you. All right, now let's move to stimulus control. So our brains are association machines. The environment plays a huge role in our behavior. And a lot of people use their bedroom in a way that they don't associate their bed with sleep. So if you're in your bed and you're watching TV, or you're doing work on a laptop, or you're trying to solve emotional conflicts with your partner, you're creating associations between your bed and wakefulness and frustration. So when you get into bed, your brain isn't instantly thinking about sleep. It's thinking about all the other stuff that you're doing in it. So stimulus control is trying to make it so that you really only associate your bed with sleep. So here are the rules for stimulus control. First, the bed is for sleep and sex only. No other activity should occur in your bed. Second, you only go to bed when you're sleepy. If you're not sleepy, just stay out of your bed and do something else. Third, if you're awake for 20 to 30 minutes, get out of bed. Now, I should note that this is one of the principles of CBT-i. There's also another approach, which would be the ACT approach, acceptance and commitment therapy. In the ACT approach, they generally don't tell you to get out of bed. They focus more on that METAL system I was talking about earlier, where you get into a peaceful state where you're awake but restful. But just to continue on with the CBT-i method, which recommends getting out of bed if you're awake for approximately 20 to 30 minutes. If you do get out of bed, you engage in a quiet, low-stress activity outside the bedroom, like reading or stretching. Make sure to use dim lights and avoid screens, and then only return to bed when you're feeling sleepy. Number 4 is if you do get out of bed, prepare low-stress activities ahead of time. So make sure to plan calming activities in advance so that you're not frustrated deciding what to do or whether you should just get back in bed. Rule number 5 is wake up at the same time every single day. So keep a consistent wake-up time regardless of how much you slept. So why does stimulus control work? So it breaks the association between your bed and wakefulness. It retrains your brain to see the bed as a cue for sleep, and it keeps consistent wake-up times to regulate your circadian rhythm. Now, just a few additional tips to enhance stimulus control. 1 is exercise. So aim for 30 minutes of moderate exercise, 3 to 6 hours before bedtime. 2 is morning sunlight exposure. So try to spend 10 to 30 minutes in sunlight within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up. 3 is avoid caffeine late in the day. So early caffeine is fine, but be sure to avoid it as the day progresses. 4 is limit alcohol. So a lot of people use alcohol because it helps you fall asleep, but alcohol suppresses deep sleep and REM. So even if it helps you fall asleep earlier, you're getting really crappy sleep. And if you have enough drinks, you're going to go through withdrawal, essentially get the hangover before you wake up, which will lead to early morning awakenings. Next is optimize your sleep environment. So the temperature should be pretty cool. 60 to 67 degrees is ideal. It should be dark, so you should have blackout shades. And third, it should be comfortable. So ensure your bed is reasonably comfortable. Now, with all these things, it's important not to obsess over them. As we were talking about earlier, trying really hard to optimize these things can actually lead to more problems than they're worth. That's because these things have a small impact on sleep. And as I was mentioning earlier, it's really sleep drive that's doing the core of the work here. So sometimes trying to optimize these things can become part of the negative belief system cycles that can cause more problems. The last tip on stimulus control is completely stop clock watching. So it's super important to not have a visible clock while you're sleeping. No one has ever fallen asleep looking at a clock and realizing how important it is they need to fall asleep. That's where that quiet wakefulness comes in, where you're in a state of comfortable acceptance with what is. And lastly, it's super important to keep your phone out of your bedroom. So put a charger in a room that isn't in your bedroom and just don't mix phone with bedtime. So that pretty much wraps up everything. For a quick review of what I've talked about, first is understanding the cycle of insomnia. So the real problem isn't sleeplessness itself, but the negative thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors surrounding it. Second is cognitive restructuring. So identify, challenge, and replace negative sleep thoughts with balanced, constructive beliefs. Third is sleep restriction, so limit your time in bed to match actual sleep time, and then gradually increase this time as efficiency improves. Fourth is stimulus control, so recondition your brain to associate the bed only with sleep, and try to break negative associations and regulate your circadian rhythm. So I hope this video helped make these concepts a little bit more accessible. The takeaway is that addressing the root cause, negative thoughts, behaviors, and associations can help you break free from the cycle of insomnia and regain your control of sleep. Thanks for watching.